So welcome everybody. What we're going to have a look at tonight is we're going to have a look at Kickstarting 2021, how to face uncertainty with confidence, courage and control. We're going to look at turning January into Zenuary, like life doesn't have to be this hard. And what we're going to cover tonight is what has gone before. In other words, what experiences have we had? Because it's only experience that leads to confidence. We're going to look at that in detail. We're going to look at what's happening now. So the present is when we can look at what we can control and what we can't control. What did we learn? So growth is what leads to courage. So when we grow, we build up an element of bravery and courage. And then how did that benefit you? That's where resilience come in, and resilience is the key. Now, anyone that knows me knows that resilience is kind of my brand. It's what I'm known for. And I suppose that's because I have had such an experience with I suppose with my own building of resilience. Now Michelin just mentioned that there's an echoing sound. Is anybody else getting that? Might be.
Yeah, I can get it too.
You're getting an echoing sound as well. Okay, I'll try and adjust the volume settings.
Jenny,
I'm gonna go back on mute.
Yeah.
Jenny, it might be Michelin's. She might be on mute. That could be it.
Okay.
So
Mitchell,
maybe admit.
do you want to try putting yours on mute?
And
Yeah. So I'm sure many of you can relate to this little image that we see above here. You know, DJ at the club when this is all over. If you survive 2020, make some noise. You know, and that's the image of your face. Most of us survived. Well, we were all still sitting here today, not unharmed, not unaffected, not unbruised and battered by 2021, and not unchanged, and not, I suppose, wiser for it either. I mean, we've all gone through a year that none of us have ever seen before, in the sense that there was a global pandemic, and it definitely, of course, has its challenges. And with every single challenge that we have, there's always growth. Whether we like it or not, there's growth. I mean, the growth doesn't always necessarily have to be positive, but there's always growth. And that's one of the things that I suppose, to remind you about, that when we overcome a year or we overcome any of our challenges in life, it's very important for us to remember that it expands us as human beings, and it increases our confidence and our courage, even if we don't realize it. And if you think about 2020 wasn't the only year in your whole entire life that was difficult, was it? No. I mean, anybody on this call, whether you're watching the recording or live with me here tonight, would be able to say that they have had years maybe not quite as bad as 2020, or they've had incidents in their whole lives that were like 2020 multiplied by 10, and yet they've still survived it. And in those moments where you thought the whole world was going to crumble and you would never be able to get out of bed again, or take another breath, or take another literal, what would you say, another kind of step forward in your life, that you still managed to. And the reason, the evidence for that is because you're still here today. You're still here on this talk. So that means there's hope in your heart, or you're listening to this talk at some point later on from my YouTube channel. And so the difficulties that we had are definitely building us and widening our life experience. And that is what builds courage and confidence. So it's about the idea of recognizing that you've overcome those challenges. And what we say is, in coaching, what we would call that is appreciative inquiry. So here's 3 questions that I'd like you to think about. And I mean, if you want, you can jot them down, or you can write down the answers now while I'm speaking, or you're getting a copy of this video so you can do them at a later stage. But what else have you survived? So think about the big life challenges. It could be, relationships breaking up. It could be being made redundant. It could be losing a loved one. You know, it could be many, many things. And at that moment, you survived it. So just acknowledging them is really powerful. What did you learn? Now, when we say learn, really, what did you learn about yourself is the ultimate question there. And what tools did you use? So, I mean, whether you knew you had those tools at the time, some of us might have leaned on alcohol temporarily, some of us might have leaned on friends, some of us might have leaned on exercise, but we all have a way to numb our pain, all of us. And some of us will lean on it temporarily and then we'll move away. So for me, my drug of choice is busyness. So, you know, in my more difficult times in life, I always lean into work. I lean into work or study. I kind of escape my problems. And, you know, when my mom passed away, my first tool that I went to, and I know we shouldn't maybe necessarily call it a tool, but it was my tool of choice, would be an alcohol. And I definitely dipped into about 2 weeks of just like numbing my pain with alcohol till I realized that that wasn't a long-term solution, because I also had a family to take care of. So I needed to find another tool that was more, I suppose, maybe socially acceptable, and also that I could allow me to parent as well as numbing my pain. And that became busyness. And that didn't end well for me because it really ran myself into the ground. But it's about understanding now, when I face challenges, I lean into the idea of, believe it or not, acceptance. Like, what is being shown to me? What is it that I need to learn? What can I control? What can I affect? And we'll be looking at that tonight. So that's a really helpful exercise, because it helps you to acknowledge the challenges you've overcome, acknowledge the growth, and also to revisit the tools that you may have leaned on at the time, because obviously they worked because you're here. And when we think about, one of the big things that people really get caught up in is this idea of being brave. And I always say to people about brave, you can't be brave unless you actually feel fear, first of all. So there's a big kind of, I suppose, shaming of fear, like face your fears and do it anyway. And, you know, fear gets in the way. And fear is a natural survival technique. So identifying your fears is a huge part of overcoming them. So courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. So in other words, like, what is it costing you versus what is it serving you? How is it serving you? So when it comes to fears, I suppose it's important for us to understand, you know, rational versus irrational fears. And what we mean by that is, people would say that irrational fears could be like, you know, the fear of ants, and rational fears could be the fear of being, you know, I know, broken into or something like that. But really, when it comes down to is, the interpretation of what something is rational or irrational is really down to you. Like, it's, for me, to be afraid of an ant might seem like it's irrational, but if it was a case that, you know, my auntie died from by being bitten from an ant when I was a small child, well, then that's not necessarily an irrational fear. So identifying your own fears, regardless of what other people think of them, is really important for you. And then to understand that how they link back to your limiting beliefs. Like, is it the fear of being, you know, left on your own, or is it the fear of having no money, or the fear of being homeless, or the fear of, you know, death, fear of disease? You know, people have lots of different fears. And then really they're tied to the beliefs that you hold about yourself and the world. So just really looking at them, spending some time reflecting on them, and understanding as well that fears are, most fears are what we call primal fears. So they're linked to our fear of what we call tribal fears. So what we mean by that is, our ultimate fear in life is really about acceptance. Will people like me? Will people see me? Will people hear me? So as human beings, you know, we think about a brand new baby in the world, all they want is to be seen and heard. And they need to be seen and heard, because if they're not seen and heard, they're not going to be looked after. So that primal fear stays with us, and it belongs to the idea that as a tribe, we belong together. So we're safer together in a tribe, and our biggest fear, our innate fear that we're born with, regardless of how much work we do, is that we would be excluded from the tribe. And if we were excluded from the tribe going back as far as the Stone Age, it might have meant that we wouldn't be able to hunt in groups, we wouldn't be able to eat in groups, we wouldn't be able to look after ourselves in groups. So that's where that fear comes from. And guess what that ties into today is what other people think of you. So I hear that slogan a lot, you know, what other people think of me is none of my business. And absolutely, like as the woman would say, damn right, that's true. But it's not a lived experience for most people. So there's no point in saying it if it's not your lived experience. I mean, it's aspirational, and absolutely that's a great goal to achieve, that you someday live your life that it doesn't matter what anybody else in the whole world thinks of you. But what's more realistic is really thinking about what the people who matter think about you. So in other words, if it's your children or your partner or your friend or your father or whatever it might be. So it's the idea that we can, if we look at that through the lens of tribal fear, is it that do we get caught up in everybody on the planet? Like everybody on social media that I haven't even met before? Is it down to my neighbors? Is it down to the kids in school? Is it down, you know, people you don't even know? Absolutely, that does not matter. And that's I suppose that's where we want to kind of send the energy. And then the people who do matter are what you often hear me saying are the people who are on your rocket ship, the people who mean more to you than anybody else in the world. I would call them, you know, your circle of trust. Most people have about 5 people. You might be lucky enough to have 7. You might be also lucky enough to have 3. It's those really top priority people. They are the people who matter. And if that bothers you, what they think about you, that's absolutely innate in you. And it's not necessarily something you need to change. The most important thing is that you like you, and you're okay with your decisions. And that comes with time, that comes with age, thankfully. It's one of the gorgeous blessings of age. And it comes with work, it comes with self-reflection. And some of the stuff that we're going to be talking here tonight, it also comes with mindfulness and doing any kind of work, any conscious work on yourself. Going back to our fears then, one of the big things is, how is your fear serving you? So if you're afraid of being eaten by a lion, that's obviously serving you because you're not going to put your head into the lion's cage. That's no problem. But then what is it costing you? Is it costing you anything in your life right now? Well, no, because I don't live in a society where there's lions freely roaming around. When I go to the zoo, they're pretty well kept away, and I don't intend heading to Africa and the African plains anytime soon. So there is no cost. Now, what if the fear was, I'm afraid to go out into the world by myself. I always need to have somebody with me, you know. Well, then that could be serving you in a way that you always have a companion, you always have a safety net, you feel safe in the world. But what might it be costing you from the point of view of, are you always going to have somebody that's willing to go there? Are you always going to have the same experience that you'll have with that person versus without that person? Are you ever going to really get to know yourself when you're always with somebody else? You know, so it's just, and that's not a judgment I'm making on you or anybody else in the world. Only you know that difference. The other thing about fears is this question of, is it true? You know, I'm afraid my husband's having an affair. I'm afraid my daughter's taking drugs. I'm afraid, you know, all these fears that we put into our lives. If you're interested in anything to do with that work, is it true? Is it really true? Look up a lady called Byron Katie, Byron, Katie, and her website called thework.com is absolutely amazing. And she has a load of free resources, and she teaches this stuff, a lot of this stuff, completely free of charge. And her basis is that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the trauma and challenges that we cause in life in our own minds is made up in our own heads. I always say 90% of the arguments I never have with people. I have them in my head. Like if she says that to me and he says that to me, I'm going to say that to him, and she better not be saying that. And, you know, why does that person not text me? Or, you know, that's why emojis were invented, because we cannot communicate with people just through words, because we don't know what they really mean. You know, if they say no, do they mean like no? Or do they mean no? Or do they mean no? You know, we just don't know, because the part of our mind that's always making up stories is always making up stories in the negative. So when you make a story up in your mind is not trained to make up a story that leans into the positive. At the moment, it can be trained in that area, but at the moment, most of us are running our minds and our lives based on how society has shaped us, and society has shaped us in a fear-based society, and we're conditioned to think the worst. So, like a good example was I got a missed call at 9:30 this morning, and my phone, my mind instantly went into, oh my God, what's wrong? And when I text my friend to say, is everything okay? She was like, yeah, I was just saying hello. And I was like, okay, well, she was expecting me to be kind of up and about running around at 9:30, which is completely natural. But I was thinking, God, that's very early. Maybe it's just something wrong. And of course, there wasn't anything wrong. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that moment. It's just the way our minds are trained. So is it true is a really powerful question when it comes to fears. What am I prepared to do to overcome this fear? You know, so if you're afraid of ants and it doesn't really affect you, except for the point maybe in the summer you get a few ants around the front step, there's probably not a lot that you're prepared to do to overcome that, because it's not really affecting you. But if it's something really huge, like you're afraid to have a relationship with somebody, you're afraid to go for an interview, you're afraid to, you know, do things that are really going to benefit you in your life, ask yourself the question, really, how badly do you want this? Because that's going to determine what you're prepared to do to overcome this fear. And it's from that place then you can look for action or steps or help. And again, I'm going to come back to this concept that I probably say on every single talk. It's baby steps. It's 1% gradient every single day, moving towards what it is you want to achieve. It's never the full sticky plaster getting pulled off, because your mind just goes into too much uncomfortableness, and all it does is it seeks the familiar, and you ruin your chances of success. So I know there's a lot of theories around, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. And absolutely, that may work for a lot of people. And there's a huge amount of different techniques you can do for that. But for a long lasting, substantial change, you need to work with how the mind works. And the mind will seek the familiar. So if the familiar is, I suppose, never being able to drive, it'll always come back to that until you eventually take the driving lessons. I mean, so when you learn how to drive, you don't just get into a car one day, read a manual, get into a car and drive the car. You actually go out and you do 10 or 12 lessons or whatever it may be until you feel comfortable enough to go out and drive. It's the same for any of your goals or any fears that you're trying to let go of. It takes time introducing the new environment and making it your familiar. Now, you can also make it familiar in your mind, as anyone knows that's worked with me in the past. You can use visualization and you can use affirmations, but I won't be covering that tonight. That is on my website and my YouTube channel if you want to look up some of the videos on that. But for the moment, we're just really introducing courage and overcoming our fears. So I put the slide up because I thought it just reminds me so much of all of these courses that you find online and everywhere about how to be confident. You know, sign up here today, $999 or whatever it might be, 10 easy steps in how to be confident. Do you know what? Realistically, confidence is not something you can teach somebody. Real inner confidence is not something you can learn from somebody else. You can certainly learn how to act confident, but true inner confidence actually comes from growth. It comes from experience. So I wanted to just show you this little kind of diagram of, you know, how confidence is formed. So we have happiness, love, and success. So in other words, when we get happiness, when we get love, and when we get success, we get confident. And then when we have confidence, we get happiness, love, and success. Isn't that right? So that's the model that we're used to kind of seeing. And at the same way, that model works exactly the same way. When we've no love, no happiness, no success, we have no confidence. So it's like, it's a conundrum, isn't it? Because if you haven't got one, how are you meant to get the other? What about if we were to look at it a bit from this way? The only way to be truly confident is to simply become comfortable with what you lack. So have a little think about that for the moment, what you lack. So what that means is when we meet people that are really confident, first of all, I want to get the point of confidence versus um, assertiveness kind of out there. So an awful lot of time we see people that are extroverted and we see them as confident people. But in reality, most extroverted people are behaving in an extroverted way to kind of cover up for their lack of confidence. Real confidence is self-assuredness, so the most quiet people in the world can be the most confident. They just walk into a room, and for me, confidence, my definition of confidence is being okay with yourself. Being okay with yourself in any situation, whether you have to go into the headmaster's office, you have to go into a police station, you have to go into a ball, you have to go into a food bank, whatever it might be, in any situation, is being okay with yourself. That's what my definition of confidence is. And where that comes from is being comfortable, with what you lack. So if I went into the White House in the morning, or the Áras an Uachtaráin, and I walked in and I was meeting Michael D. Higgins, I am aware of the fact that maybe I wasn't reared in, a private school. And I don't have a Foxrock address, or I don't have a particular accent. I mean, I'm not saying that Michael D. Higgins does either, but maybe some of the people in my environment at the time might be. But you know what? I'm actually okay with that. I'm actually okay with that, because I know I have so many, it's not even other, I know I have so many things to offer. So that would mean that I would be able to be confident in myself in that moment. Now, there might be other environments, because we all have our little buttons that make us feel insecure, that we might feel a little bit unworthy or less confident in ourselves. So for me, when I first went back to college, maybe 10 years ago, it must be now, I remember feeling that imposter syndrome, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, everybody in this room knows way more than me, and I shouldn't be here. And then I had to kind of grow into my confidence. And then I became comfortable with what I lacked. I became comfortable with not knowing everything that I needed to know. Because you know what? That's what I was there to learn. And then that helped me grow in confidence. So it's the idea of where confidence actually comes from that's really important for us, because confidence is a huge part of resilience. And we all look at people in the world and go, oh, I wish I had their confidence. But honestly, when you really peel them back, particularly on social media, a lot of it is a mask. And, masks serve a purpose. I mean, like, I seen a lovely post on Instagram today saying, like, social media is about putting your brand out there. I mean, my brand on social media is my life coaching brand. So you see me with all my positivity quotes and all that kind of stuff. But there are days where I really struggle to get out of bed, get dressed, put one foot in front of the other, just like everybody else in this world. But you wouldn't know that by looking at my social media presence. So when we look at confidence, we have to think about confidence as it can be a mask that people wear that makes them look like they're confident. In other words, they're acting confidently, but they're not necessarily feeling confident within themselves. So it's self-assuredness, being sure of yourself is really what we become. And like you say, loving yourself, or liking yourself even, is probably a more realistic goal to think, warts and all, even with the lumpy bumpy bits, even with the lines that start to appear, or the hair not being long enough, or the nose being too big, or whatever it might be, or the accent not being a particular way, or the finances not being a particular way. It's just learning to be okay with yourself. So this is really where confidence comes from. So confidence, see the picture in the middle there we have our confidence, okay? So where we have either success or no success. So in other words, we attempt something, we try and do something. So for example, I gave it an example of me going to college. So I went to college. First night that I was meant to go, I didn't bother going. I talked myself out of ridiculous excuses that I didn't have the money and I didn't have the time. So I avoided it. Then by week 2, I gave myself a kick in the backside and said, now, come on, Jenny, this is an excuse you're making. If it was for the kids, you'd find the money and the time. So I went week 2, and I sat there in the class thinking, what the hell am I doing there? And it was really uncomfortable. But then I went back the following week and the following week and the following week. And eventually, so week 1 was no success. and I had to find a little bit of comfort in my failure. And from that grew my confidence. And from my confidence grew my success. So it's not about always performing and winning the battles that society kind of shape as wordy battles. You know, like what they define success is can be completely different to each individual person. So for me, success is literally lying in my bed at night saying, I did my best today. I did my best today means I had a successful day. There are times I lie in bed at night and I think, I didn't really do my best today, but you know what? I'm going to do my best tomorrow. So for some people, it's one step on one foot in front of the other. It's getting on social media, posting videos when they don't feel like doing it, promoting their brand, promoting their business, putting themselves out there, going somewhere completely different than they've never gone before. It's doing something that you're not 100% comfortable with. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be 100% uncomfortable with it either. You can be 1% uncomfortable and you lean into that little bit of uncomfortableness till it becomes your familiar. And that's where confidence comes from. Confidence comes from experience of failure and success, not just one or the other. So confidence comes as much from failure as it does success. And confidence comes from stretching yourself. So just living a little bit beyond, you know, they say, you know, beyond the tip of your nose. If you can just go a little bit further than that. And it can be simple things like if you've never, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you have to jump out of airplanes and do bungee jumping. You know, that's what we tend to think of when we hear about people stretching outside their comfort zone. It can be something as simple as doing something like going to the library by yourself. You might have gone to a library, but always gone with somebody. But maybe this time you're going to go by yourself. Or maybe, you know, it can be something that you do online, like a course you do online, or a food that you try, or a book that you read. Because one of the things that we do as humans, and this is built into us, is we seek the familiar. That's why we have this lovely little cozy spot. It's like a blankie, and I call it the blankie. It's like your comfort zone. And nobody wants to get out from underneath that blankie. It's the coziest place in the world. But guess what? Outside the blankie is where the magic happens, because that's where you really get to see for yourself who you are and what you're capable of. And like I said, it doesn't have to be jumping out of airplanes. It can just be, I don't like cheese. I've never liked cheese. You know what? Maybe I'll try one type of cheese. Okay, well, I still don't like cheese. That's fine. At least I tried it. You know, I'm no good at languages. Well, let's try picking up an app this time and seeing if I can learn a new language, or read a book, or talk to a neighbor that you've never knocked into before, or shop in a different supermarket, or shop online. You've never shopped online before, or, you know, try a different hobby. The best way, I suppose, to really look at trying something new in your own life, and this handout will come out to you with the recording, is this is a really helpful way if you're thinking about stepping outside your comfort zone or looking at your comfort zone, is to complete a life audit. And what that means is like a little scan of your life, like, you know, write down on your piece of paper. Now, this will come out to you in a handout form that if you want, you can do it using that, or you can just write this down tonight. What are the things you normally do? So if I think about my life, I normally get up at a certain time. I normally have a bath. I normally do my qigong in the mornings. I normally have toast for breakfast. I normally go into my office. I normally have this for my lunch, and I normally have this for my dinner, and I normally do this in the evening, and I normally go to bed at this time. So they're my normally things to do, you know, normally. And I usually do, they can kind of mean the same thing, or, you know, there might be other things in there. You know, I usually go out for lunch once a week. You know, that might be something I throw. I usually go and see my father, or I usually watch Netflix, or whatever it might be. And then I prefer to. So my prefer to would be definitely, I prefer to take a bath rather than a shower. I prefer to have toast for my breakfast than any other breakfast. And, you know, they're not really life-changing things. They're just small, simple things that, you know, I prefer to do in life. Now, they can be bigger. I prefer to go on holidays in Ireland, you know, if that was the truth. Or I prefer to shop online, etc., etc. I hope you're kind of getting the gist of me. Now, what you do with the audit is you kind of really do an analysis of your life as much as you can. It can be ongoing. It doesn't have to be all done in one night. And then you look at the opposite of that. So in other words, what do you never do? So, or what do you rarely do? You know, so I prefer not to. I prefer not to shower. I prefer to bath. Well, I might decide in future for the next week, I might decide to have 3 showers versus 3 baths, you know, or I might decide if I prefer to have toast, I might decide that I prefer not to have toast. I might prefer not to have cereal or yogurt or any of those kind of healthier things for breakfast. I might try and implement them. Or I hate to. That's where the real growth is. So what do I hate to do? I hate to stay up late. I love my sleep. I love my early nights. I hate to go out walking in the cold. Most people who know me probably would know that about me because I'm great when I'm with somebody else. Well, there's a good one. I prefer to go walking with somebody else. I hate to go walking by myself. So here's one. If I really wanted to try and stretch my comfort zone a little bit, there's something I could look at. I'd try having a walk maybe once a week by myself. And it doesn't have to be a 10K walk. It can be down to the Spar shop and back. It can be around the field and back, but it's something that I've done that I don't normally do. And maybe when I do that once, I might go, that wasn't too bad. I might do that more often. Or I might do it and go, oh, never again. That was a pain. Or I might do it and think, that wasn't too bad, but maybe the next time I listen to my earphones, you know. And it's just about really growing in yourself. Now, Joe Dispenza, if anybody's familiar with his work here, would say that in order for the neurons in our brains to rewire, we should do something differently in our lives every single day. And what he means is even simple things like if you get out of the bed on the left-hand side normally, try getting out of the right-hand side every kind of second day. If you normally get dressed and you put your trousers on first and then your top, try putting your top on and then your trousers. Because what happens in our minds is we end up living in a subconscious, unconscious way where we're just kind of doing things in automatic form. So even small things like the pattern at which you dress yourself in the morning, changing that up is actually a step outside your comfort zone. So understanding that your comfort zone is not just the bigger things like I've never learned a language, or I've never been on a plane, or there's much smaller things in there as well, and they all build your confidence and your courage, all of them. So like there's no I suppose the universe or life doesn't have like a rating, it's really you that rates whether it was an achievement or not. And one of the big things that we do about achievements, overcoming something, whether it's overcoming something tragically or overcoming something that we really put our mind to, like achieving a goal, like for me, say finishing college or whatever it might be, is we very rarely rest in the success. We kind of get the piece of paper and like, right, next, we don't really rest in the success. So you should rest in the success. You should rest in the moment of your success and the moment of your failures to learn from them. So learn from your failures. What was it that you did? What was it that caused your failures? What was it that you learned from it? How would you do it differently? Sometimes we look at failures and we think, oh God, I never got like the thing that I wanted. I never got that place on that course that I wanted. Maybe that wasn't a failure. Maybe that was the universe sending you something better instead, or something else instead, as opposed with being a failure. And then also when we rest in our successes, most of us set goals in our life, go, oh yeah, now when I get that piece of paper for my degree, I'll be happy. Or when I get that job, or I get that driving license, or I get this, I'll be happy, or I'll be able to do this and I'll be able to do that. But then when the time comes and we actually achieve our success, we very rarely acknowledge it and reward ourselves, whatever the goal or the promise was at the time. So make sure that's a huge part of growth and building your confidence as well. And of course, that brings us now into the present moment. So let's bring the present moment right here, right now. Today, in particular, we had more announcements or more news of restrictions across many other sectors, and more closures and postponement of the reopening of schools and creches across the country. So without a shadow of a doubt, there's people out there feeling a huge amount of fear and a huge amount of uncertainty. And one of the big things that our mind does is it what would you say, it predicts the future in the negative, you know. So now my husband's going to be at home every day under my feet and I'm going to end up killing him. Now, you know, my kids are going to, you know, get depression and, you know, I won't be able to cope with that. Now we're not going to have the money for the mortgage. Now we're not going to, you know, and all of those are realistic concerns. But really what helps me in that moment of what I call tornado thinking, where the thoughts are just like a whirlwind dragging me underneath, is this lovely question that Oprah Winfrey is kind of known for coining the phrase. I think she definitely has a book called What I Know for Sure. And it's this: what do you actually know for sure? So let's stick with the facts, you know. So you know for sure that, you know, maybe your job has closed down for 3 weeks. You know for sure that you are entitled to the COVID payment, or you're not entitled to the COVID payment, or whatever it might be. And then tomorrow, whatever else you need to know, you can find out and know for sure. But stay out of what you infer or what you think might happen. Or, you know, oh, this means now the whole year is going to be like this, or that's going to happen. Because you bring your self back to 2019. December 2019. And I remember people kind of slagging this in 2020. And everybody, and myself included, were at 2020, like it's a special number, 2020. This is a really special year, and this is going to be magical. This is going to be my year. You know, anyone remembers thinking that? And then 2020 came in with an absolute bam, you know, cricket bat in the face for a lot of people. And it wasn't without its jewels either, for, you know, for many of us, as well as its challenges, you know, huge big thorns, and for some people huge big jewels, and for others small little gems, you know. But it wasn't without its gems either. And in 2019, we were setting our goals or looking forward to 2020. None of us could have known what was around the corner. Not one single person could have known what year was around the corner. So how in 2021 can we be any different? Okay. So what do we know for sure? We know for sure that we're in level 5. We know for sure that you're either in employment or out of employment. You know, what you know for sure is personal to you in your life. So if you can stick with that, it's from that place that you can plan and you can work from. But the other stuff that we add to the equation, or maybe this is going to happen, or maybe that's going to happen, or, you know, that really sort of, I suppose, adds to the tornado in our minds, which, as we know, we're already in a storm. So why add even more into the mix? So sticking to what you know for sure is a really powerful tip for you. And it's worked for me over the years. Now, this quote I found out later on. I came across this quote on a billboard 30 years ago, probably now, in Australia. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. It's actually Martin Luther King was quoted as saying that. And standing for something is really important. So when you're thinking about the future, I don't really want to get into goal setting for 2021, and not because there isn't any point. I just find that January, as I mentioned at the very start, biologically, physiologically, we are in hibernation mode. What I tend to do in the start of the year is I get into how I want to feel, as opposed to who I want to be, or what I want to weigh, or what I want to look like, you know. So that's what I mean by if you stand for nothing. So what is it that you stand for? How do you want to feel today, next week, next month? And I also do like to look at sort of setting intentions and what would you say? Really setting intentions. I would kind of look at them month to month, as opposed to I want to feel like this for the year. Because if I said to my mind, I would like to feel peace for 2021. My mind is going to say to me, Jenny, are you for real? You're going to feel peace for a whole year. You can't even feel peace for a whole day. How are you going to work that one out? And then the goal gets trashed, or the intention gets trashed. But if I say to my mind, my goal for January, or my goal for this week, or my intention for this week, intention is probably a better word, is to feel peace. my mind goes, okay, I'll see what we can do. We'll work on it. We'll do our best. And I'll remind myself of that daily. Today, I would like to feel peace. And you probably, if you know, can see me on camera, you'll see I look like I'm about to brush my teeth. That's one of my little life tips, that when I work with intentions, I remind myself every day with a trigger. And my trigger is brushing my teeth. I brush my teeth every morning and I say, today I intend to feel peaceful, or I intend to be peaceful. And then at nighttime, when I'm brushing them again, I say, how did that day go for you, Jenny? Was that peaceful? No, it was not. Okay, well, let's have a look at what it's going to be like tomorrow. You know, what could have been better? What does tomorrow need to make it more peaceful? And maybe I needed to be less busy or more present or mindful myself, you know? So when we think about the future, values are a huge part of understanding what matters to you, because the definition of a value is what is important to you. Now put VIA in brackets there to remind you about a thing called values in action. So values in action are the values that you kind of live your life by. So a lot of us would say, my values are, what would you say? If I was to say to you, what do you find important? What's important to you? People might say, oh, the planet. I think the planet's important. But if I was to look at your values in action, and you kind of shop like clothes are disposable, and you use a lot of carbon products, and, you know, et cetera, it mightn't necessarily be a value in action. Do you get what I'm saying? So there's an assessment that you can do online that I'm going to include in the resources going out to you, where you can identify your values in action, or strengths is probably a better word for them. And what it does is it gives you a good indication of what you hold important to yourself. And really from that place, then you can ask yourself the question, like, am I living my life in line with what's important to me? And what would my life be like if I was living my life in line with these values? Or sometimes we look at the values and go, but that's maybe why I'm struggling at the moment, because that value is not being met, or that value is being rubbed against. Really important exercise. And I'll talk more about values later in the year as we move through the Wellbeing Network. Tools, then, if you look at the future, what tools have you got in your toolkit? So we know you've had tools from the past because you've survived till today. You know that now online more than ever, there's tools to beat the band. But the same way that every single human being on this planet is different, what works for people is completely different. So what works for me might not work for you. So some people need the gym. Some people need food. Some people need chocolate. Some people need exercise. Some people need, you know, everybody needs different things. Mine are really simple. Breath is the absolute key for me, and mindfulness. And I'll talk more to you about that at the end, but definitely just really breath is a part of my mindfulness. Just really consciously breathing 10 times a day minimum just really helps me to massage my brain, to nurture my brain, and really to nurture my body. Saying that doesn't necessarily mean that's what works for you, but have a look at what you're using at the moment that works already, and then also have a look at what might work. What have you not tried? Like so many people that I met this year. So for me, in 2020, I tried Qigong for the very first time in March 2020 with the lovely Joanne Faulkner. And I'm thankfully that was my godsend. That was my gift for 2020. Absolutely. I think I would probably never not do Qigong. I just find it so powerful for my physical and mental and emotional health. It's 20 minutes a day. It's just unbelievably powerful. Now, up until I started the Qigong, I remember my acupuncturist a couple of years saying to me, Jenny, you should try Qigong, you should do Qigong. But I just had this thing in my head that Qigong was this mad, like mystical, I don't know, higher water kind of thing. And I was like, yeah. I never really looked into it. Now, because I took the leap of looking at this woman on Facebook and trying it out and enjoying it, now I found a tool that also works for me. So you could be the same. It could be yoga, it could be belly dancing, who knows what it could be. It could be acupuncture, acupressure, hypnotism, you know, who knows. But if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. So have a look and be willing to try out new things, try out new herbs, try out new techniques, and just do what works for you, because there's always a solution. Everything is sort outable. So if it's anxiety from the current uncertainty, what is it that you need that could help you with this? And do not be afraid to ask and reach out to your network of friends or family or social media to see what has worked for other people. That's what I always do when I'm looking for a solution, and say, right, people have gone before me with this problem and they found a solution. So what did they do? Because if it worked for them, it may work for me. Look at the influences in your life. This is really a big thing for me. Your circle of trust. Who or what are affecting you? So who is very simple. Who are you spending the most amount of time with, and are they draining your energy or radiating your energy? We talk about that radiator versus drains. And you know what? I know it's difficult because you might be in lockdown with somebody who is draining your energy, but you have to remember that nobody can make you feel a certain way. The idea that people drive you mad. You also have to think about the concept of, no one can put an idea in your head without your permission. You're always in control of how you choose to think. So if you are in a house with other people that are driving you mad, what can you do to combat that? Can you put your earphones in? Can you go into a different room? Can you do your breathing exercises? Can you work on yourself to make yourself more resilient for the influences that you are surrounded by? Now, if you're lucky enough not to be in lockdown with people who grate you, then you have a choice whether you spend time with those people or not. And one of the big things that we get caught up in is this have to energy. Oh, I have to go and visit her, or I have to talk to her on the phone every day. The one and only have to in life is death. It's the only thing that we have absolutely no choice in. Everything else is a choice. And yes, I hear you, but we have to see somebody. But if we don't see them, this will happen or that will happen. It's not that you don't have to see the person. It's that you choose to see the person because you don't want the consequences. And that's a difference than having to. Having to is there is no choice when there's always a choice. So who or what will affect you? So here it is. If you eat dairy and you're lactose intolerant, that affects you. If you drink wine and it gives you a hangover, that affects you. If you eat chocolate and it affects your digestion, that affects you. If you watch the news, Sky News 24/7, and it makes you feel anxiety, that affects you. No one can tell you what's affecting you in your life, only you. But here's where you really, I suppose, learn to kind of overcome that. Is the very first step is getting quiet and listening to yourself. Noticing when you wake up in the morning, just asking yourself, how are you doing today, Jenny? Yeah. Anybody else here to visit? Any anxiety with us, or any fear or any dread? No, that's great. And if there is, maybe you can breathe into it, and even before you get out of bed, choosing how you wish to feel. So Esther Hicks from the Law of Attraction would say that if you can manage when you initially realize you're awake, before you even open your eyes, you can tune into how you wish to feel. So in other words, if you want to feel peace, you can just linger on the feeling of peace, a nice peaceful image. Maybe you're remembering a moment where you felt real peace in your life, or you're imagining what it would be like to feel peace. You're lingering on the emotion of peace. And you can linger on that for about half a minute. I suppose you manifest or you create that feeling for the rest of the day. Now, it doesn't mean that you have a magic wand and you go around the world and nobody's going to get in your way. But what it means is you're now more consciously aware that you're seeking peace, and you're less likely to give your peace away without realizing it, by reacting as opposed to responding to somebody. So it's something worth thinking about. It might be something you want to try. I'll definitely be talking about it later on in the year through the Wellbeing Network, the idea of manifesting emotions. And emotions are all energy. The word energy itself means, the word emotion itself means energy in motion. So every single emotion that we have is made up of energy, and how we feel affects the energy that we have. So here's a really good kind of check to do with yourself. What or how much energy do I have? So if you don't have a lot of energy, what makes energy? Energy. Energy makes energy. And I know that's like, you're tired, so the last thing you want to do is have a walk, or last thing you want to do is go to the gym or whatever it might be. And I get that completely. But even something like jumping up and down or shaking your hands can create energy in your body. So it doesn't have to be like really difficult. And also noticing what is taking your energy. So if you get off the phone to somebody and you feel like getting into bed afterwards because you have no energy left, that person has just taken all of your energy. Or that conversation with that person, not that person, the conversation you've had with that person has taken all your energy. So in other words, what's going through your mind as that person is talking has drained you so much that you have no energy left, because people can't take your energy. You give it away. It's your choice whether you give it away. So what can you do differently the next time that you're talking on the phone to that person? Say you still decide you're going to talk to them the following day and it's going to be an hour. How can you protect your energy? Do you really have to go into that cycle of, overthinking what you want to say next? Or can you just listen without judgment, listen without intent, listen without having to fix the problem? It doesn't take as much energy. The other thing you could do is you can meditate, or you can do mindfulness exercises before you take the phone call or after you take the phone call to top your energy back up. So there's different things you can do, but of course the first thing is noticing it, noticing what is affecting your energy in the first place. Now we're not far off the end here, so I'm going to continue because we're a little bit late starting. So that just means we only have about 20 minutes at the end for questions. But I really want to introduce you to this, the idea of control. Because really at the moment, what we're heading into when we head into uncertainty is the idea that life is out of control. So this circle is called the Circle of Concern, and it's designed by Stephen Covey, and he has books written on the success principles, seven principles of success, or maybe 12. So you can certainly look that up online. I'm just quoting his diagram because it was his original work. So what it talks about is, it talks about our circle of control. And you notice that's the smallest little part in the circle, what we can directly control. So then we have after that a circle of influence, the concerns that we can do something about. So what can we influence? So for example, we can't control the weather, can we? But we can influence how the weather affects us. So we might look out and say, I need to put the wheelie bins out tonight, and it's hailstoning. We can't control whether it's hailstoning or not, but by God, can we put a big, huge overcoat on and a big pair of wellies as we bring the wheelie bin out, and we're not as affected by the bad weather because we're wrapped up warm. And then the last one is then the circle of concern. And they are the wide range of concerns that we cannot control or influence, and we need to let go of. So anybody jumping into their mind what might be under that one? Lockdown. We cannot control what measures the government are going to announce. A few days ago they announced measures and we're like, oh, that's the worst of it now. Then today there's more news. Next week there could be more news. Really, we are, I suppose, we're caught in that tidal wave of what is being announced. There's other concerns maybe, that we'll look at now on the next slide. We'll give you examples. So here's examples of what you have control over: your thoughts, your words, your actions, your behavior, reactions, your mood. I'm not going to read them all out. You can read them there for yourself. And of course, you're going to have the slide to look at yourself. And then we have other people's actions. We can influence other people's actions. So I'm thinking of my adult children living with me. Can I influence their actions? Yeah, because I can sit down and talk to them. I can put boundaries in place. I can tell them what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. I can influence my children's future. I can influence where I work. It's quite obvious what you can see there in the blue circle. Now, the other one is really the one we spend most of our energy and time even talking about. Look at what's at the top of the list, the weather. I mean, how much time do we spend talking about the weather? We talk about the weather, we talk about, you know, celebrities' behavior and their opinions. We talk about the economy, traffic. My God, you know, can we control the traffic? Can we even influence the traffic? No. I mean, it's something we have to live with. We can influence how it impacts us, but we cannot influence it. Do you understand me? Like the weather, we can influence how the weather impacts us, but not how it performs. So if you think about the outer circle, and it's not to say that you just have to kind of shrug your shoulders and go, oh, that's the weather, or that's the, you know, being made redundant, or, you know, celebrities' behaviors are just despicable. You know, there is something you can do for how it impacts you. For example, if a celebrity behaved in such a way that it upset you, you might decide to boycott their products. Or if you were made redundant, you might decide to retrain. Or if you're looking at the weather, you might decide to move countries or change your living circumstances or change the clothes that you wear. So you can influence them, but you cannot change them in any way. And when I say influence them, what I mean by is influence how it impacts you. So the middle one is what you can control. The outer one is what you can influence. And the other one is what you cannot control, and you can only influence how it impacts you. And if you focus your energy on what you can actually control and influence, it conserves so much energy and so much mental strength. So I suppose just to bring that home to you. And then finishing on this point of resilience. I mentioned it at the start. All of what I've spoken about before leads us to resilience. So 2020 was an absolute bumper year for resilience, because guess what? We have survived it, and we learned a lot of tools along the way, whether we liked it or not. And when we learn how to become resilient, we learn how to embrace the beautifully broad spectrum of human experience. So what I mean by that, I really took a lot of time to pick the quote on resilience that I wanted to share, because there's so many. I really wanted to share the idea that it's not just about embracing the good things in life. It's even the bad things. I mean, 2020 had so many tragedies for so many people, but there were so many golden moments. There was a lot of moments of communities really coming together. There's a lot of people really coming back to themselves, learning what was important to them and learning how to live differently. There's a lot of people homeschooling their children now they probably never thought they would. I mean, I'm sure you all have your own versions of that. So if we decided that we're only going to embrace all the good things, you know, that life throws at us, we wouldn't be able to embrace the broad spectrum. It's like embracing all of the human experience, and that includes ourselves. Going back to the point you made at the very start about confidence is being okay with you, warts and all. Like learning to love or like yourself and being okay with what you are good at and not good at. And, you know, just I suppose embracing all of you, as opposed to just the good side that you show to everybody else. And that's what resilience teaches us. And the little image of the little fern coming up through the cracks is just, that's it. There are little ferns all through the world popping up, and they have popped up because of their resilience, and we will too. So I would just like to leave you with these thoughts of the key takeaways. Compassion for yourself and others. Compassion starts with you, but also remember, in the time that we're in, people are fearful, anxious, just uncertain, unsafe on their feet, in the sense that they don't know their next step that they're going to take. So if you come across somebody a little bit irate in the supermarket, try and come into the place of compassion as opposed to judgment, and yourself as well. Stop driving yourself with that big baseball bat. Put the baseball bat down. Awareness, really tuning into yourself, and a big tool for that is reflection. Now, reflection can be a journal. It can be a phone. You know, there's lovely apps on your phone. There's that one, Calm, has a gorgeous section that allows you to journal in the app. I'm sure there's millions. I know there's the Elephant Journal. I know the PQ, the Positive Intelligence app, has a place for reflection. Me personally, I just use the notes on my iPhone. It's just because I'm not that great at journaling, although I'm working on it. So reflecting, even if you can't write it down, at least stop and think. There's a good expression that I learned through a podcast this week, and it's called DEAR, drop everything and rest. So it's like, take a moment in your life and just kind of down tools, ponder, just sit and reflect on how your day is going and how you feel, how you'd like it to go, what you'd like it to be better. Intention then, set your intention daily of how you'd like to feel. Notice where your focus is going. If you're focused on what you shouldn't be doing as opposed to what you should be doing, if you're focusing on what you don't want instead of what you want, always focus on the positive. It doesn't mean you have to ignore the negative. You'll get what you focus on. So if you want to be more energetic, don't focus on how tired you feel. Focus on the more energy that you want instead. And pause. That's the same one I was coming back to with the DEAR. Drop everything and rest. Just pause daily, at least once a day, if not more than once a day. And just before we finish up, I just want to tell you the next Wellbeing Network is on the 1st of February, and it's how to love your life, how to love everything you do, even the things you dread, with kindness, and how kindness is the key to self-care, compassion, and empathy. Very similar to the theme of tonight, but just in more detail. And then the next Transform Your Mental Fitness course that I run is starting, it's actually postponed now to the 3rd of February in light of the restrictions. I just thought there might be a lot of people at home with children now that won't be able to get online for courses. So I've pushed it back to the 3rd of February. It's 9:30 to 12:30. Again, all this information will be on the slides. You'll have them to have a look at, and you can contact me for further information if you wish. And on the last note, I've got some fantastic news. I have a brand new online course that myself and Sue, who couldn't join us tonight, Jenny and Sue, and we have designed a brand new course called Foundations for Life. There's 3 parts to it, and we're releasing part 1, which is building strong foundations. There's 6 modules in it, and it's kind of getting to know your mind, getting to know the mind-body energy connection, getting to know your energy, getting to know your breath, self-care, and boundaries. And these are all pre-recorded videos that come with a module worksheet. And the great thing is, once you buy it, then it's yours for life. You can do it as many times as you want over the years. That will be online in the next week or 2, and it'll be on my website that you can log on, download, pay for, purchase, the whole lot there. So just letting you know that that's coming down through the ranks. So that's all from me tonight, folks. Thank you very much for listening to me talking for so long. I hope I kept you alert and interested. You didn't get to tune out, I should say. You know, sometimes you're hearing someone just talk and talk and talk. It's hard to keep up the concentration. So I'll unmute you all now in case anyone would like to ask any questions. There we go. Or did I mute you or did I unmute you? Oh, I'm only unmuting you. You don't have to unmute, by the way, if I've asked you. It's just in case you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make. So how was that for you guys?
Brilliant.
Really good.
Thanks, Jenny. That was really good.
I'm just going to stop the recording now. Yeah. And just to say as well,